This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
Do we need AI on every single device we own? Do we need an AI in our fridge or on our laptop or on our smartphone? It's something, especially after all of the recent CES announcements where it looks like AI is coming to every single device. And I'm not just talking about software, I'm talking about the hardware. All right, so we're going to be talking about that and a lot more today on Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jordan Wilson, and Everyday AI is for you. That's why we're building it. We're building it for you. So you can better understand what's going on in the world of generative AI and not just keep up with what's going on, because that's hard. That's difficult. I try it every day and I feel like I'm always falling behind. But not just how we can all keep up, but how we can actually get ahead, right? Because if you're listening to this show, first of all, congratulations. I'm not saying that because you get to listen to me, right? That's not what this is about. I'm saying because you are still an early adopter, right? And as AI becomes more and more intertwined in our lives, you are listening, so you are keeping up, you are getting ahead. All right. So if you're joining us on the podcast, thank you as always. Make sure to check your show notes. I leave my email in there. Drop me a note. Let me know what you want to see more or less of on the show. If you're joining us on the live stream, thank you as always. Let me know what your questions are about on-device AI. This is something, to tell you the truth, I'm always learning about it, but I've noticed this trend. So thanks for our live stream audience. Hey, it's good to see Mike 4G back in the house. What's going on, Mike? Thanks for joining us. Brian, tuning in from Minnesota. Hey, is it snowing where everyone else is? Maybe not in Dallas where Josh is. Maybe so, but man, me and Cecilia from Chicago here, we're actually getting hit with snow for like the first time in forever. Chrissy, thank you for joining us. So our live stream audience, let me know, what are your questions about on-device AI? I know it's kind of confusing. I'm even confused about it sometimes. So we're going to dive into that today and a lot more. But before we do, if you haven't already, why the heck not? Please go to youreverydayai.com. Yes, sign up for the daily newsletter. I was told yesterday was one of our best newsletters ever. So make sure to go read that, check it out. It was all about, how to build and monetize on the GPT store. But on our website, we have more than 180 back episodes of podcasts, more than 180 newsletters where we take deep dives into generative AI. We have different learning tracks on our website. So you can go and click, maybe you're in sales. You can see every single sales podcast we've ever had. So it is literally a free generative AI university. So you got to go check it out. But let's talk about what's going on in the world of AI news for today. There's a lot. Here's a good one. Any Swifties out there? Be careful, because there's a new Taylor Swift that's confusing fans. It's obviously an AI version. So an unauthorized ad for a cookware company featuring an AI-generated Taylor Swift offering a giveaway was recently removed from social media. So if you saw Taylor Swift giving away free cookware, not really a thing. So you're going to have to shake that one off. This is not the first instance. Yeah, that was a joke. That wasn't AI written. That was just me ad-libbing. But this isn't the first instance of AI-generated ads using celebrity images and voices without permission. With cases, you've seen these involving Tom Hanks, Scarlett Johansson, etc. Also, this has led to proposed legislation, at least here in the U.S., called the No Fakes Act, aimed at protecting individuals' rights to control their image and voice. Y'all, we're going to be talking about deepfakes a lot. If you don't like it, sorry. Because at least here in the US, we have the election cycle coming up. I've been saying it since literally the very first episode of the show 9 months ago, that deepfakes are going to ruin us in the 2024 election, at least here in the US. All right, next piece of AI news. The enterprise version of ChatGPT is picking up some steam. So OpenAI just kind of announced, or information was released about some usage for their ChatGPT enterprise version. So they've said that they have 260 paying companies with over 150,000 registered users. So this is big companies only, right? Because ChatGPT just released, not even 48 hours, ago, the ChatGPT Teams plan, which is really geared for companies 2 to 149 people deep in terms of size. And that one is, pretty affordable at $30 a month. I haven't even seen the enterprise, pricing per customer. I've seen so many different things, but OpenAI coming out and saying they have 260. I think that's a pretty big deal. I think that means that more companies are at least experimenting with this enterprise version of ChatGPT. All right, the last piece of news for today is one of the biggest names in generative AI has teamed up with a tech giant. So Microsoft and Typeface have announced an integration that will see the startup's AI technology embedding into Microsoft's Dynamics 365 customer insights platform to simplify the campaign building process for marketers. So yeah, if you are an enterprise marketer, this is huge news for you. So this integration will allow marketers to create content aligned with the company's branding and style from a blank canvas thanks to this Typeface integration. So if you haven't heard of Typeface, it is an enterprise-grade Gen AI product that helps large companies use generative AI to create more personalized content for work. Woo! A lot going on in the AI news today. Hey, Josh is excited. Josh is going to see Taylor Swift soon. All right. Hey, thank you. Tara laughed at my Jordanism there. Hey, Val, thanks for joining the show. Hey, it's good to see you back, Val. All right, but I want to talk now about this trend, if you will. And I don't even know if it's a trend per se, or is this just the direction that generative AI is heading? I'd love to get your questions and your thoughts, your comments, your insights from our live audience. And also, if you're listening on the podcast, let me know as well. So let's talk just a little bit today. And yes, sorry, you're just stuck with me today. I don't have a brilliant guest as I most days normally do here on the Everyday AI Show. So you're going to have to listen to my rambling. So here's what on-device AI is, and I want to talk about if we actually need it. All right. So I've noticed a huge trend over the last couple of months of trying to bring all kinds of generative AI to a device. All right. So let me first kind of hit rewind and say what that means, right? So right now, all of the generative AI platforms that most of us use on a day-to-day basis, so whether you're talking about ChatGPT or you're talking about Bard or Midjourney or Runway or whatever it is, whatever generative AI, that you use, it's essentially in the cloud, right? Like we go on a company's website or we go on a Discord server and we access, generative AI that way. So the big picture, right, is, and this is where the trend is heading, is bringing these models, specifically large language models or small large language models, whatever you want to call them, is bringing them to an actual device, right? And not needing to connect to an external service or even connect to the internet to use AI, to use generative AI, to use large language models. So we've seen this in a lot of recent announcements. And hey, FYI, I'll tell you now, if you're hoping to get into the technical aspect of this, and talk about like Mistral, LLM, and Llama 2, and all these small models, that people are hacking and forking and putting on devices, that's not this. We're talking about the bigger picture here, right? This trend, and we're seeing it because you've seen, even in the last week or two, big announcements. Microsoft, Nvidia, big announcements that they just had at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, talking about releasing AI chips. Right. So this is where everything is heading. Even another one, Qualcomm and Meta, talked about a huge partnership, and this should be releasing soon, I believe. They're bringing Llama 2. So Llama 2 is, Meta's large language model, a small yet very powerful model. So they're bringing that to PC chips, to the Qualcomm chips. So that means that on your local computers, without needing to connect to the internet, you will have Llama 2. You will have a large language model running locally on your machine. So what does this mean, right? And this is also, actually, before I dive into that rhetorical question, we have to talk about Apple too, right? Because if I'm being honest, I think the short-term success, right? So if we're looking at short-term as, 6 to 18 months, I think the short-term success in market adoption rate really goes to what is Apple going to do, right? Apple's never first to the party. We already see the people who are first to the party here. It's companies like Microsoft, bringing AI to PCs. It's companies like, Meta bringing their model. It's companies like Qualcomm, Nvidia, right? They're first to the party. But it's usually what in how Apple does it to see if this is going to be an industry trend, right? Example, Apple wasn't the first media player, right? But the iPod made that a trend. Apple wasn't the first, or the iPhone wasn't the first touchscreen phone, but that's what made it the norm, right? So I think we can't overlook, even though we haven't heard a lot, we've heard rumors, right? We've heard rumors that Apple is reportedly spending more than $1 million a day building their next generative AI product, whatever that is, whether it's software based, which is one thing, or whether it's hardware based, even though technically, it's if it's on the software, it's technically hardware based, right? Because then it can be offline. So we really don't know, I think, or won't truly know the future of on-device AI until we see what is this next Apple announcement that they've been working on. Is it going to be cloud-based? Are we going to need to be connected to the internet? Or is whatever Apple is working on in the large language model, Gen AI space, is it going to live offline on our phone? Right? Is it going to live offline on our computer? Personally, I would love that, right? Because what offline or on-device AI does is it brings this concept of personal AI to life. Whether you like it or hate it, right? Offline AI is the marriage of your personal data and productivity, whatever productivity looks like to you, whether it's being more social personally with your phone or whether it's accomplishing more on your PC. But that is essentially what on-device AI is really aimed toward. But it's going to be interesting to see what Apple actually does. Is whatever they're working on, this, rumored Ajax is one of the names, or some people call it Apple GPT. Is this going to be cloud-based? Or is it going to live offline on our phones? I would guess the latter, but I have no clue. All there is speculations and report out there. Yeah, like what Val is saying here, and again, love hearing from the live stream audience. Let me know what other questions or thoughts you have. Val says not being dependent on the internet would be a game changer. Absolutely. I think that is the big push to bring on-device AI. And I actually have some thoughts, because we're going to go over the pros and the cons of this here in a minute. But I have some thoughts, Val, on what that actually means. And I love what Maybrit is saying here is do you see AI coming to Alexa or Google Home to improve the responses further? Maybrit says hers is so sassy. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So this has been reported on for many months. That Alexa, Google, and Apple are working on large language model integrations with their smart assistants. And we've already started to see that slowly roll out in different form factors. All right, but let's get back and kind of talk again about Apple is impacting this trend, right? Because I think that as we jump into, not talking examples, but talking about how this is going to play out, I think it's going to be largely dictated by what we see from Apple and when, right? I think that's what brings so much new technology to the masses. It's Apple's usually never first. You always hear, Android phone users, whenever Apple releases something big and it becomes popularized, it's, Android users are like, oh yeah, we've had that for, 2 years or whatever. But it's you have to be keeping your eyes on what Apple is doing in this space. All right. So now we understand there's a trend. All the big companies are working on-device AI, making, generative AI or large language models live, on an actual chip, to live in an offline, to bring this personal AI to all of us, to marry our data in a fast way, because that's ultimately what it's all about. Not having to connect to an internet and waiting. It brings that latency or the wait time, bringing personal AI to your device. It brings it from, maybe, a second or 15 seconds, depending on how complex the task is that you're working in a cloud base, to maybe instant. Maybe we're talking milliseconds, right? And that is the big picture here, right? Because not everyone needs a large language model like GPT-4 with its 1.8 trillion parameters, right? You can't really get the full version of that right now on a device. I know people are, trying to fork it and into, make versions of GPT-4 run locally. And there's some success on that, but that's not even what I'm talking about, because I don't even think, for the most part, the average everyday person needs a model that big on their hardware. So I do think, right, even though I don't know, I do think this is where it's heading, even with Apple. I think we're going to see an on-device, fully capable generative AI that works offline. So why? Why do we need this? Do we need this? And what are the downsides? All right. So let's talk about the why. We already talked on hit on some of these things, but the offline access and the speed are huge. But the personal AI, that's what this is ultimately about. Making every aspect of our devices smarter and faster. So if you think of, as an example, think of in your mind maybe your best use case of ChatGPT. Maybe it's very specific, but you found something that you can use a large language model in one very specific use case, and it's extremely efficient at it. It saves you time. You're extremely pleased with the outcome, right? So think of that feeling that you have, right? But think of applying that to your everyday interactions with your device, with your phone, with your computers, right? Because that's, I think, the bigger picture, right? Right now, our relationship, I think, with large language models or generative AI, for the most part, is a when we need it kind of thing, right? Like we have to go and seek that out. You don't just, you can't just reap the benefits right now from generative AI at all times. But think of this. The average human checks their phone hundreds of times a day. So think, if you had on-device AI, a large language model on that phone, think of how much more productive maybe your life could be, or your work could be, or your responses could be, or how much time you could save, right? When you can have a large language model being able to work and understand what's going on every single program you're using. So whether you're on your phone and you're reading a message, or you're typing an email out, or you're scrolling social media, or you're reading an ebook, right? To be able to have a large language model understand all of that and work seamlessly between those apps, that's the future, right? And that is how I think large language models and generative AI and on-device AI eventually become seamlessly integrated into our lives, to the point where it helps us so much that we don't even know it. But then it's also, maybe, is it hard to live without it, right? So let's quickly go over some of the downsides and the upsides. I promise y'all, this isn't going to be one of those episodes where I accidentally talk and rant for 45 minutes. We're going to keep this to a somewhat succinct episode. All right. Yeah. Okay. I like this. Comment from Tara here. Bicentennial Man meets Big Hero 6 having on-device AI. Yeah, I love that. Right. Having a helpful assistant that's with you everywhere you go. And here's the other thing, and this isn't what I'm talking about, but I'm really just talking, at least in the context of this conversation, about our devices, our current devices, right? I'm not even necessarily talking about new devices. The humane pin, the pin that you can wear around on you, and it's, always seeing and hearing and understanding what's going on, and you can talk to it, right? Or the new Rabbit, right? I think it's the Rabbit R1. That device was just announced at CES. It's essentially a new piece of hardware. And a lot of people are like, oh, why can't this just be an app on your phone? But the Rabbit R1 is a completely new piece of hardware. We talked about it hours after it was released. But it's a new piece of hardware. Same thing. It has a camera. It's kind of like an assistant. It has a large action model built into it. Right. So we'll see if that whole terminology picks up steam and sticks around. Then you have other devices, right? These hardware devices, the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, right? That's not what we're talking about in this show. I'm literally just talking about the current existing devices that we all use on a day-to-day basis, mainly our cell phones and our laptops, right? Or your desktop computer. So now let's talk about some of the downsides and the upsides. Because there's some things in here that I don't think many people are talking about or thinking of. I'm sure maybe the extremely smart, brilliant people that are building this on a day-to-day, they're thinking of these things. But hey, everyday AI is for everyday people. So I don't know if we're thinking about some of these downsides and upsides when it comes to on-device AI. All right. Let's first talk. Yeah. And hey, side note, I agree with Brian here saying the Rabbit R1 looks cool, but the last thing you want to do is carry around another device. I agree with that. But I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll be so awesome you won't care. So yeah, we're just talking about the devices we already have on us on device AI. So first, a downside of on-device AI. And for this argument, let's just stick to phones. Let's stick to phones here. Okay? Because there's two different things. Downside of on-device AI. Some of these things are obvious, some of them aren't. But local AI, offline AI, on-device AI is so resource heavy. It's so resource heavy, right? Think of the compute and the tens of thousands of GPUs needed to power something like ChatGPT, right? And think of just the sheer amount of power and resources and compute that is now going to have to be on our personal devices, right? Obviously, that's the chip companies have known this for many years, and they're coming out with smaller, more powerful, just shockingly, shocking advancements in chip technology and these new now AI-powered chips. But still, it's resource heavy. I can only imagine that we're going to see, some of these first smartphones that have, this offline large language model or this AI built in. I think some of them are going to be problematic. How much testing can they actually do with these before they before they get these to market? There's always going to be a rush. Google's already, announced that some of their next, Samsung phones with the Google Gemini Nano model, they're going to have this, right? So it's a rush. It's a rush to market. Everyone wants to be first. They want to sell more. They want to, be the first one with an offline large language model. We're seeing that already. It's resource heavy. What does that mean for your device, your personal devices? Well, it can kill your battery life and can potentially kill your performance, right? Think of like when you're, maybe on your laptop. I was just doing this last night. I was working super late last night, putting together some materials, following up with all the amazing people out there who took our free PPP Prime Prompt Polish course. Side note, if you want access, just send me PPP. But my computer was hot. It gets hot, right? I have a fairly expensive MacBook Pro. And, when you're using it, especially when it's not plugged in, that thing gets hot. I mean, luckily, in full disclosure, it was also kind of keeping me warm because it's kind of cold in Chicago right now. But performance when it comes to on-device AI is huge. All right. Another downside is it going to be useful, right? Because with on-device AI, you have to find the balance between it being small enough, yet powerful enough, right? And I think that's where, especially some of these early iterations, and again, I think that's why Apple usually waits. I think some of these early iterations, some of them are either going to be too powerful and too resource sucking, or some of them are just going to be not powerful enough and not useful enough. And then it's like, all right, there's millions of people, maybe unnecessarily, either you had to pay extra, right? Because that's the other thing. On-device AI phones are going to be more expensive, right? They're going to cost us more. And I'm guessing it's going to get to the point where we don't necessarily have an option, right? Like if you want a new iPhone, you can't opt out of the, 7 cameras that it has on the back, right? Or you could maybe get one with 5, it's not actually 7. I think it's like 4, right? But you might not be able to opt out of these things when this hardware comes to your device, this AI hardware. So you're probably going to be paying more. It's going to be more resource heavy. Battery life, I'm sure, is going to suffer. It's actually probably going to go down to where things are now because we might be at, kind of peak, battery performance level. All right. And then there's one other downside. And I'm going to take a sip of this. Tara's saying habit and life changing. Absolutely. I'm going to take a sip of my water before I get to this downside because I have to throw out a little bit of a precursor here.
Are you still running in circles trying to figure out how to actually grow your business with AI? Maybe your company has been tinkering with large language models for a year or more, but can't really get traction to find ROI on Gen AI. Hey, this is Jordan Wilson, host of this very podcast. Companies like Adobe, Microsoft, and NVIDIA have partnered with us because they trust our expertise in educating the masses around generative AI to get ahead. And some of the most innovative companies in the country hire us to help with their AI strategy and to train hundreds of their employees on how to use Gen AI. So, whether you're looking for ChatGPT training for thousands or just need help building your front end AI strategy, you can partner with us too, just like some of the biggest companies in the world do. Go to youreverydayai.com/partner to get in contact with our team, or you can just click on the partner section of our website. We'll help you stop running in those AI circles and help get your team ahead and build a straight path to ROI on Gen AI.
So another thing that I think no one is talking about when it comes to the downsides of on-device AI is the, we'll just call it the Skynet factor, right? Is there going to be a kill switch? No one wants to talk about that. If we have on-device AI, right? Whether it's in your computer chip or it's running, you can't, you might not be able to opt out of it eventually, right? So think of this. Think of sometimes how, Siri or Alexa, you ask them a short question and they get it wrong, and then they keep on talking for like another 15 to 20 seconds, right? And it's kind of annoying. Think of like what that would look like if this is happening all the time on your device. Will there be rogue AIs running wild? Again, because it's not like you're going to a website or opening an app or signing up to a service and putting a prompt in, right? This AI, very soon, I'm guessing, is going to be running locally on just about every device. There's no kill switch. Again, I'm not saying, right? I'm not one of those people, oh, my phone's going to, take over my life and take over the world. But what's to stop it? Will there be a kill switch if it is hardware based, if it's in the software, right? If I'm not opting into it when I use it? That's something we have to think about. I hope companies are keeping that in mind. But what happens if every single iPhone in 3 years has AI built into the hardware? What happens if I don't want it? Will there be an opt-out? I hope so, but I don't know. That's a downside that we have to think about. Yeah. And Sean with a great comment here, which we're not even getting into, when we're talking about things like Neuralink, right? With the, the AI in your brain. That's definitely the next step. But here's the thing. On-device AI is already here. It's already here. It's already announced. The chips are here. Production. We're about to see it in mass pretty soon. Maybe the first big push is, Google's Gemini Nano that's coming out to, some of these new, Android or, Google smartphones. We're going to be seeing it soon. Okay. Or I think it's coming to the new Samsung smartphone. Sorry. All right. So now let's talk about some of the upsides. I don't want to end this episode on a downer like that. Let's talk about some of the upsides of personal AI. All right. One example is, I think, the potential for your life to just be much easier, much more productive. Like I just said a couple of minutes ago, if you can picture in your mind that one task that you do in a system like ChatGPT that is just like, you're just blown away at the amount of time it saves you, how impactful, having that for that one specific task is. Imagine if this all goes well, if it goes swimmingly, having that on your device, having that, let's just say on your phone, everywhere you go, where your phone or your AI, your on-device AI knows you. It knows where you are. It knows what you like. It knows what you're doing across multiple apps because it lives on your device. Yes, part of that is creepy. Part of that is extremely empowering. I think it's going to bring a lot of positive momentum and good things toward people that maybe have accessibility problems or setbacks, right? I think it's huge. I think it's potentially very powerful. The upsides of having a personal AI, of having on-device AI running locally, right? That's the thing that makes this possible. Running this locally, and getting that wait time or that lag time that normally you have to wait because you're chatting with a server, like ChatGPT, and there's compute power and there's downs and ups, downtimes, uptimes. It's not like that when it's on your device. It's instant. It knows everything. That's number one. Think of those like recommended replies. If you're ever using iMessage and someone texts you like, "Where are you?" Right? And then it pops up right there at the bottom, and you can just click one button and say like, "Oh, sends your current location," right? Think of that across your entire cell phone or your entire laptop, where it just knows everything about you, and it brings ease, flexibility to your fingertips. All right? The speed and always being connected is huge. All right. But yes, Tara loves AI for accessibility, democratizing opportunities for us all. Same thing. So the last upside as we wrap up today's show, and if you do have a question, please get it in now. But the last upside that I don't really think people are talking about is, will on-device AI eventually take away this environmental black eye that generative AI has? I've been trying to read more about this and to learn more. So, hey, maybe if you know someone, have them reach out to me. We'll bring them on the show. But, one thing about generative AI as it is now, right? So working on it in the cloud, is the environmental impact, right? It's huge. It's enormous. It's something that people aren't really talking about. The compute power, a lot of us don't understand it, but the compute power needed to even just for me to use ChatGPT every day is crazy. I'll put the exact amount, but there was we talked about it many months ago on the show that for every 50 prompts that you run, it was a certain certain number of gallons of water that means, right? Because the thing with all of these kind of cloud centers, data centers, again, I'm not the most highly technical person, so I might not be using the right word, but essentially not just the compute power that is having a toll on the environment, but also you have to keep those data centers and those chip centers cool, right? That's what all this water is being used for, because they get hot and you have to pump this water to keep these centers cool. The environmental impact of generative AI is huge. It's huge. The carbon footprint on this thing is enormous. So again, I don't know this, but here's my assumption. I think on-device AI can help with that, right? Let's just say as an example, I send 200 prompts a day to ChatGPT. It's probably a lot more, right? And let's say there's, tens of millions of people that use that as much as me. Let's say there's tens of millions of people who do 200 prompts a day inside ChatGPT. That obviously has a cost, not just a compute cost, but an environmental cost as well. So now let's say in a year or two, on-device AI, instead of me now prompting ChatGPT 200 times a day, I'm only prompting ChatGPT 20 times a day. I reduce, my cloud-based prompting by 90% because I have a local on-device AI. Yes, I still have to power my phone every day, but presumably that has a much smaller environmental impact than always having to, prompt out, or Mid-Journey or Runway, these generative AI tools that so many of us use literally all the time. Companies say how much that they're even losing when people use generative AI, at least right now, because of not just the actual compute cost, but the environmental cost as well. Something has to change, right? And I think on-device AI might be that first step. So that's a little sneak upside for you as we wrap up here that I think a lot of people aren't talking about. All right. I hope this was a fun one. I had a good time learning a little bit more about on-device AI. Also, whether you're listening on the live stream or on the podcast, let me know. Let me know what else that you want to hear about, right? So one thing that we do here at Everyday AI, aside from, yes, we're reading so much news, it hurts. We're trying out so many generative AI programs. I literally lose track. I can't tell you guys the amount of time that, I'll see a generative AI program, on social media or something, and I'll Google it, and I'll Google a tutorial, and the first result that comes up is me from 6 months ago. That's how many generative AI tools I use. But one thing that we try to do here at Everyday AI is to look at the trends, right? To not just look what happened, but to try to better understand what is happening and have an open conversation about it, and to build a community of people together who want to learn about this to better grow their companies and to grow their careers. So thank you for tuning in. As always, there's a ton more. So go to youreverydayai.com, sign up for the free daily newsletter. Maybe, a lot of these, statistics I was trying to rattle off the top of my head. I'm going to make sure that we get all of those specifically done for you and get them in the newsletter. So go sign up at youreverydayai.com. Shoot me a message, shoot me a DM. We always, put my contact information in the podcast notes. If you're listening on the live stream, you have it. Let's continue to grow together, to learn generative AI, to grow our companies, grow our careers. Thanks for tuning in to Everyday AI. We'll see you back for another one soon. Thanks, y'all.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.